I'm a 45-year-old woman, and I love my husband, who's 46. We've been married for 21 years, and we've shared so many memories, both good and bad. However, there's something that has been slowly chipping away at our relationship. My husband's obsession with boobs, particularly mine, is threatening to ruin our marriage. I'm at a point where I don't know what to do, or how to tell him that I'm just not into his specific sexual turn-on anymore. We met in college and have been inseparable ever since. We were in love then, and we are still very much in love now. Early on in our marriage, he asked me if I'd ever considered getting a boob job. To be honest, I had thought about it before, but coming from a small town where that kind of thing was frowned upon, I never really gave it much more thought. Plus, I worked in a technical field, surrounded by men, and I didn't want to attract the wrong kind of attention. For years, we didn't really talk about it again. Until after we had kids, it was me who brought it up this time. I was unhappy with how my body had changed after pregnancy, and I wanted to feel better about myself. My husband was very supportive. I got the surgery, but I was conservative with the size. I wasn't completely satisfied with the results though. It felt like I had regained something that had been missing, but I still wanted them to be a bit bigger. A few years later, I went for a second boob job. This time I was happy. I felt confident and comfortable in my skin. My breasts were the size I wanted, and I didn't think about them much after that. But then my husband started bringing it up again. He'd comment that he wanted them even bigger, and he began saving pictures of women with large breasts on his phone, showing them to me. At the time, I was already a 34 DDD, but he kept showing me photos of women with absurdly large implants, 2,000, even 5,000 cc. I couldn't stand how they looked. I told him that I would never want my breasts to be that big, but the topic continued to come up over the years. His fixation on large breasts made me feel small. Then he introduced me to a doctor who offered expanders, implants you could fill over time, gradually increasing their size. Although I knew how much this turned him on, I wasn't excited about the idea. Still, I decided to go ahead with it, choosing 1,000 cc expanders just to make him happy. He was thrilled, but I wasn't. The implants were uncomfortable, and the hard port used for filling them was bothersome. They were saline instead of silicone, which added to my discomfort. He was eager to keep filling them up, and every few months, he'd ask when I wanted to add another 100 cc. When I got the expanders, my plan was to fill them a few times, just enough to feel proportionate. I didn't want them too big, but I reached 2400C and couldn't handle going any bigger. Yet my husband continued to push me, saying, the bigger the better, and even implying that I should want to keep him attracted to me. We went ahead and filled them to 1500C, but during that session, I had a full-blown panic attack. I felt like a freak, like my breasts were too big. I was deeply uncomfortable, and I begged him to remove that last 100cc. He refused, insisting that I needed to let things settle and see how I felt afterward. But it had already been 3 years since that fill session, and I haven't let him add any more since. In that time, it became clear that he's not just into large breasts, he's obsessed with them, especially the world's largest breasts, the kind that reach up to 20,000 cc. He even pointed out a model called B-Shine, and the thought of having breasts that enormous absolutely horrifies me. I hate everything about the idea of being that big, but my husband talks about it constantly. It's gotten to the point where I feel like he can't even be satisfied unless I mention or agree to the idea of growing my breasts to that size. What started as harmless pillow talk has turned into something much more real, and it's all he wants to focus on during our intimate moments. I've tried to go along with it because, as his wife, I want to make him happy, but I've reached my limit. He wants me to get on a schedule to gradually fill my breasts until they reach 20,000 cc within 5 years. I can't do it. I don't want them any bigger than they already are, but every time I try to express this, it turns into a fight. He'll bring up old arguments, telling me that he was only able to get over them because I promised I'd go bigger. Now if I back out, he says we need to revisit those fights and deal with them all over again. This obsession of his feels overwhelming. I've tried coping, tried telling him what he wants to hear, but I feel like I'm losing myself in the process. Every day, sometimes multiple times a day, he asks me, are you really going to get that big for me? If I say anything other than yes, it starts an argument. I know that my body is mine, and I'm not going to do anything I don't want to. My husband is a loving man, a great father, and he would never hurt me. I don't think he truly understands how strange his fixation on these enormous breasts is or how much it upsets me, but it's breaking my heart. Every night I cry after we go through our routine of talking about breasts. Even during sex, he's completely focused on the idea of them growing, and he has even started ending our sessions by facing the TV, watching videos of these giant-breasted models, just so he can finish. It's devastating. I feel like we've reached a breaking point, and I need to have a conversation with him about this soon, but I don't know how to approach the subject without causing more hurt. I love him so much, and I don't want to be his fantasy. I just want to be his wife. Any advice on how to handle this? I'm struggling to see a way forward, but my love for him makes it so hard to let go. I'm 18, and a couple of months ago, I started talking to this guy who's 21. From the start, he's been nothing but loving and really good to me. He finds me very attractive, and even talks about wanting a future with me. But here's the thing, I'm not his type physically. He's into thick women with big boobs and a big butt, and I'm more on the skinny or average side. All of his exes had the body type he prefers, and to make it even more complicated, I'm light-skinned, while all his exes were dark-skinned, though, ironically, his celebrity crush is light-skinned. Despite all this, he constantly fights for me, reassures me, and makes me feel wanted. But in the back of my mind, I can't help but wonder if he's just waiting for someone who fits his type to come along. What if I'm just a placeholder? I'm not insecure about my face, I know. I'm conventionally attractive. But when it comes to my body, I feel like I'm just mid. It's hard to shake that feeling. And it leaves me wondering, is it possible for a guy to like a girl who isn't his type and still fall in love with her? During my last year of college, I met a girl and we hit it off almost immediately. I fell for her right away. We started dating, and for a few weeks, everything seemed perfect. But soon things started to fall apart, and we broke up. I moped around for a while, trying to make sense of it. Meanwhile, she started dating someone else. About a month later, I was at the library working on a paper. By coincidence, I realized I was sitting right next to her, though we were in separate cubicles. We ended up walking together, and she asked if I could walk her home since it was late. One thing led to another, and we ended up back in my room. We got back together, and for a while, things were great again. But as the school year came to an end, we faced a bigger challenge, trying to figure out how to stay together. My parents didn't like her, and I was heading back home after graduation. She visited me once during the summer, but my mom was openly hostile towards her, and that was pretty much the end of our relationship. Even though we weren't together, we kept in touch and talked all the time. We both seemed to accept that it was just one of those things that wasn't meant to be. A few years passed, and I ended up moving closer to where she lived. About an hour away, we talked about giving things another shot, but for some reason it never happened. Eventually, we both started dating other people seriously. I moved in with my girlfriend, and she moved in with her boyfriend. Before long, she got married. We remained such good friends that I even DJ'd her wedding. I still remember there being a lot of pictures of us dancing that night. Her new husband, on the other hand, got blackout drunk, which turned out to be something of a pattern. A couple of years went by, and I found myself living alone again, not dating anyone. In the meantime, she got pregnant but had a miscarriage. She invited me and a friend up to her husband's birthday party, and that's when I learned about the miscarriage. She was devastated, and her husband was being insensitive, telling her to just get over it. The next week, she came to visit me, and we had lunch. She opened up about how unhappy she was with him, how he was always drinking, and didn't seem to care about her or the miscarriage. I tried to offer her advice, suggesting things like AA or even leaving him. If things didn't improve, about 4 months later, her husband read her journal and discovered just how upset she was about his drinking and how he had handled the miscarriage. When she came home that night, he was waiting for her on the front steps, drunk, and he completely lashed out at her. That was the breaking point for her. She told him she wanted a divorce. She didn't want any of their shared property. She just wanted out. I went up to help her move into her new apartment, and her husband stood by, watching us the entire time, all the while drinking bottle after bottle of wine. A few months later, everything was finalized, and her divorce was official. Not long after, she came to town for my birthday, and oddly enough, my parents were there. To my surprise, my mom was much more welcoming. towards her this time. We started dating again, and 7 months later, I proposed. Now, we've been married for 8 years and have a 5-year-old. Looking back, I always felt like we were meant to be together. I never really stopped loving her. As it turns out, she felt the same way. We just couldn't seem to get the timing right until we finally did. I'm a 21-year-old woman going through one of the most stressful experiences of my life, my first pregnancy and abortion. 5 days ago, I found out I was about 5 weeks pregnant. My boyfriend, who's 20, and I discussed it and agreed that it wasn't the right time for us to have a child. But since then, his behavior has been far from supportive. Instead of being there for me, he has spent most of his time at home playing on his PlayStation. He's offered little to no comfort, and as I've been grappling with the emotional weight of the situation, his distance has only made things harder. Yesterday was especially tough. He knew I was struggling, but that didn't stop him from going out drinking with his friend until 4 a.m. Today I started the medical abortion process, and rather than staying with me, he's decided to go out again with his friends for the night. When I confronted him about it, I was a complete mess, crying my eyes out, overwhelmed with sadness, stress, and frustration. What upset me the most wasn't just that I was going through this difficult time, but that his priority seemed to be his night out, leaving me to handle everything on my own. I was literally sobbing in front of him, hoping he'd understand the gravity of how I felt, but he refused to cancel his plans. His reasoning? It's been planned for ages, and according to him, staying with me wouldn't change anything about this situation. He didn't even offer me a hug or any kind of reassurance before heading out the door. We haven't spoken since, and he hasn't checked in to see how I'm doing. Needless to say, I'm furious. To add to this, he's upset that I didn't mention in my original account that the night out was for a friend's birthday, which was on Monday. He did spend time with this friend on Monday and was with him last night until 4 a.m. He seems to think that this should change how I feel, but I'm not sure if it does. Does it make a difference to you? I'm a 21-year-old college student, and I've just landed my dream job, a marketing internship that I've been eyeing since high school. It's mostly remote, with on-site work just once a week. However, my 20-year-old boyfriend, who's from a different college and currently unemployed, is upset about it. His main issue? He doesn't think I need a job while in college, and he's uncomfortable with me working nights or having male coworkers. For context, we've been together since we were 16, and he once cheated on me, though I chose to take him back. This internship means the world to me, and I don't want to give up this opportunity just because he's uncomfortable. On top of my college scholarship, I also work on government research, which he's fine with because it's fully remote. However, the thought of me working on site or having male colleagues in the internship seems to trigger his insecurities. Despite his objections, I've already decided to take the internship. Right now, the argument is on pause because he's blocked me on everything, and I'm not sure how things will turn out. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this without escalating things further, but I don't want to give in. I've been with him for so long. I didn't realize how absurd this situation might seem from an outsider's perspective. Update: last night, he unblocked me to break up with me. He said I don't respect our relationship, and that if what he says doesn't matter, there's no point in us being together. He was already set on ending things, so I didn't get the chance to discuss any compromises. In a way, I'm relieved, because I wasn't sure I had the strength to end it myself. I'm grateful for everyone who gave me advice and shared their insights. I've realized that I can't let this discourage me from pursuing my goals. I've even applied for a Harvard conference, and I'm excited about the new opportunities ahead. This experience has opened my eyes, and though I'm a little scared, I'm also ready for this new chapter in my life. Thank you for being there for me during this tough time. 15 years, that's how long my wife and I have been married. We've built a life together, raised 2 kids, and had what I thought was a solid foundation until everything shattered 5 years ago. That's when my wife had an affair. She'd been distant for a while, and our sex life had dwindled. I tried to keep things going, but after a month of rejection, I stopped trying. Then, one day, she came to me, not just to confess her affair, but to tell me she was pregnant, and I knew it wasn't mine. She knew she couldn't hide that, so she came clean. The man she had been involved with, a married coworker, he wasn't willing to leave his family, and when he found out about the pregnancy, he pressured her to terminate it. She refused, and their relationship ended. Right there. But the damage was already done. I was ready to walk away. I contacted a lawyer the next day, packed my bags, and moved into a hotel. I thought she might go live with the guy she had the affair with, but that never happened. She lost her job because of the affair, and suddenly we were in a financial bind. Staying at a hotel forever wasn't feasible, and I couldn't afford 2 homes without significantly affecting our children's quality of life.
So I went back home.
We decided to coexist as roommates, staying civil for the kids. I thought it would be temporary, just until we could afford to separate properly. But months turned into years. First, I stayed to help her through the pregnancy, then to support her with the newborn. Before I knew it, 2 years had passed. During that time, things between us improved. She went to therapy and constantly apologized. Slowly, I forgave her, but I wasn't ready to give our marriage another shot. We lived together, but we weren't a couple anymore, just co-parents, raising our kids. Her daughter, the child of her affair, became mine as well. I couldn't help but love her, just like my other 2 children. That's what kept me there for another 3 years. Now, 5 years later, I find myself at a crossroads. Last month, my wife and I had sex for the first time since the affair. She'd been trying to reconnect for years, and I finally gave in. Strangely, it was better than it had ever been. But now, I feel like I need to make a decision. Do I try to truly reconcile with her, or do I finally move out and end this once and for all? It's not fair to keep her in limbo, especially when I know she wants to fix our relationship. What she did was terrible, and I know many would think I'm crazy for even considering reconciliation. But here's the thing, I still love her, I never stopped. And despite everything, I believe she loves me too, at least now. For the past 5 years, we've lived as roommates, not as a married couple. She could have done anything, dated anyone, but she didn't. She goes to work and comes home, that's it. I've kept tabs on her, and she stayed true to her promise. I, on the other hand, did briefly date someone after her baby was born. It didn't last long, but that changed something in my wife. It hurt her to see me with someone else. She even admitted later that it made her understand what I had gone through. It was after that she started therapy in earnest. But now, here I am questioning everything. Is it crazy to think we could reconcile? Can years of changed behavior really prove that someone has changed for good? Or am I just setting myself up for more pain? I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My boyfriend and I have been together for a while, and even though we come from different cultures, I've always tried to be mindful of those differences, but his possessiveness has become overwhelming, and it's taking a toll on me. Whenever I try to talk to him about it, he just brushes it off as if it's nothing. It's gotten to the point where I'm scared to make simple decisions like what to wear or whether to go out with my family because it always leads to an argument. Our relationship became long distance after we finished school abroad. I could move to the US, but he can't. Since January, I've been back in my home country, mostly staying inside because he doesn't want me going out. During this time, my leukemia relapsed, and I've delayed going to the US for treatment because I know it would upset him. I even told him that if he found an opportunity in another country, I'd go with him and continue my treatment there. But months have passed, and my health is getting worse. Recently, I told him I need to go to the US soon for treatment. I even promised to visit him in Delhi when I could, but instead of showing support, he exploded. He treated me horribly and began sending death threats. He said that if I left, our relationship would be over and that his life would be ruined. The thing is, I've never cheated, but he doesn't trust me to make decisions without him or without my family watching over me. It's incredibly frustrating because my family trusts me completely. They see me as responsible and mature, but he doesn't. He also insists that either he, my sister, or my mom come with me to the US, even though my family lives in different states. I told him I could take care of myself and that my family has their own lives to live. I even offered to help him financially if he could get a visa, but he can't. And now he's blaming me, saying that all he wants is for us to be together, and that I just don't understand. It feels like he's trying to make it all my fault. In desperation, I reached out to his family, mainly his sister, about the death threats, hoping they would step in and help, but his sister didn't seem to care and sided with him completely. She doesn't acknowledge the serious things he's been saying and doing, and that just leaves me feeling even more isolated, as if that wasn't enough. He started questioning why I'm choosing to get treatment in the US instead of Germany, not realizing how much more expensive that would be. I explained that my insurance covers my treatment in the US and I wouldn't have to pay rent because we have a place there. But when I told him this, he dismissed me, saying I have money but no brain. He only found out about the best leukemia treatment in Germany through a Google search without understanding my situation. At this point, I'm mentally and emotionally exhausted. I've been supporting him both financially and emotionally, but his attitude and behavior are driving me to the edge. He constantly tells me I should feel lucky to be with him, and he dares me to try being with someone else, claiming I'll just get played. But he never takes responsibility for his own actions. He's quick to blame me or others instead of looking at himself. The situation is complicated because he can't get a visa to visit my home country, and he also can't get one for the US, even with my financial help. It's ultimately up to the embassy, not me, but I'm getting blamed for that too. Part of the issue is that we're not married yet, and he thinks it would be easier to get a visa if we were. But I'm not ready for marriage, especially not with the way he's been acting. I'm honestly afraid of what his mindset and attitude could lead to. My boyfriend and I have been together for about a year now. He's always been really affectionate, constantly wanting hugs, kisses, and physical closeness. I enjoy being touched, but on my terms. After a long day, I love nothing more than curling up with him, cuddling and unwinding. But lately, his need for physical contact has become overwhelming. It doesn't matter. If we just made out 5 minutes ago, he wants more. Even if I'm busy trying to get things done, he'll come over, physically turn me toward him and start kissing me again. It's suffocating. I've tried to tell him I need space, but it feels like he doesn't listen. It's like my boundaries don't exist. This morning, something happened that's left me feeling disturbed. He stayed over at my place for the night, and we had a good day yesterday, had sex, went for a walk, and just enjoyed each other's company. But the next morning, I had to get up early to make us breakfast. As I was frying eggs, he came over not once, but 3 times to turn me toward him and make out. I was visibly annoyed, telling him I was in a hurry and needed to get ready for the day, but he didn't care. Then, out of nowhere, he pushed me down onto the couch, straddling my knees, and started kissing me aggressively. He was all over my face and neck, and the worst part, he was pressing his morning erection against me the entire time. It happened 3 times in the span of 30 minutes. While I was just trying to get ready, his actions left me feeling sick and violated. He kept telling me he loved me, probably 10 times that day, but instead of feeling loved, I felt trapped. I started to feel like he doesn't care about my needs or my personal space. It's like my discomfort didn't even register with him. To make matters worse, as I was trying to change into my work clothes, he stood right next to me, touching me, staring at my breasts. I couldn't help but feel like I was nothing more than a sexual object to him, not someone who deserved respect and consideration.